All right, here we go, everyone. Another awesome episode of the All Around Adventure podcast. And joining me today, I have Correy Hawk, who is a fellow U.S. Marine and the founder of Organic Archery. So, Correy, thanks so much for taking time for joining me, man, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I've been following you on Instagram for a bit now, and, it's always great to connect with a fellow Marine. And first and foremost, thank you very much for your service. It's just, it's an honor when I ever get to meet, not only a fellow Marine, but a fellow veteran who's, done their time. So thanks for your service, man.
Likewise, brother. Semper Fi.
Hoorah. All right. Well, we got a lot to cover today. And, as I mentioned, you're also the founder of Organic Archery, which is your business. And, you make traditional longbows, which are amazing works of art. Let me just put it out there right away, too. And we'll certainly get into that. But I kind of want to go back in time a little bit here just to start off to learn a little bit more about your background. So let's start with your military experience. What was it that actually led you to pursue not only just the military, but the Marine Corps?
Really, it was just that school wasn't my cup of tea. I left the house at 18, pretty average, went to a community college for maybe a year and a half, and I was getting ready to transfer to a university, and I just wasn't vibing with school. It just wasn't my thing. I really didn't like sitting in the lectures. It wasn't that it was overly difficult or anything. It just wasn't my thing. So I was looking for a new challenge and kind of at a weird crossroads in my life. So I went into the recruiting office. And I always knew right from the beginning that I wanted to be a Marine. If I was going to go into the armed services, I was going to go for the most difficult branch in my mind anyway. And I kind of was young and 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And I wanted to kick down doors and do all the stuff that Marines do. So I headed for the recruiting office, and the rest was history.
Yeah. And how old were you at the time when you decided to enlist?
I enlisted when I was 20.
20. Okay.
Yep.
So, all right. So a little bit of adulting experience at that point. Unlike me, I was 3 weeks after walking across the stage at high school graduation. I was on a plane to San Diego for my boot camp experience. And where did you end up going for basic training? Were you an East Coast or a West Coast Marine?
I was West Coast, okay. MCRD San Diego.
Yes, same here. So, all right, well, let's talk about boot camp next then, because I think this is usually kind of like the part about that many people are most fascinated with when it comes to talking about the military is, the training, because we undergo some just brutally hellish training. We're getting our asses kicked for 3 months straight. So I guess what was kind of the thoughts going through your mind when you first, landed in San Diego and you're on the bus heading to the depot?
When I'm on the bus headed to the depot, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when you first step off and get on the yellow footprints, and you got drill instructors screaming in your face, and you go in and get your hair shaved, and you're getting hazed right off the bat, and they're screaming, yelling, and stuff flying everywhere. It's a real culture shock. It was a shocker for sure. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I had no idea what to expect. And it just kind of puts you in this, I don't know how to explain it other than a state of shock. You just kind of go through the motions, right? It's all crazy in the beginning. You're just going through medical and getting shots and getting geared up with uniforms. And it's really crazy for a while. And that's before the training even starts. So it's definitely a big adjustment. And then, as you know, once you start getting into the training, they really play a lot of mind games. When you first get to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, they make you dress like a total dork so that everybody knows you're a squid and like a brand new Marine.
Oh, yeah.
You got to roll up your trouser legs and button up your blouse all the way to the top so that your collar looks all stupid, and they make you shave your head bald. You don't earn your high and tight haircut until third phase of boot camp. So yeah, man, it's just a lot of mind games.
Yeah.
We had different things going on. Cause there's like, and forgive me if I don't remember exactly, but I think there's four battalions or like groups.
I think that's right.
Or companies. Like we were golf company, and then there's like so many units inside of that. But we would have one group of recruits who would get double rations, and then our platoon would get like half rations, or they'd half starve us to death. So it was pretty intense.
Wow. Yeah. Now, what would you say was your favorite evolution? I think for me personally, I really enjoyed MCMAP, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. I don't want to throw out too many acronyms right from the get-go for our audience, but I really enjoyed the martial arts aspect. And then I also just think just time on the range too, I think I really enjoyed. What about you? What were some of your favorite training evolutions?
Range time for sure was where it was at for me. I tried to, once I actually got to my unit, I'd jump on any range opportunity there was any sort of machine gun school or marksmanship school. So I was all about the rifles, and I kind of like doing the workups too, like dressing in the full rattle, and doing like the live drills and stuff. And I just like playing war games, I guess.
Right on. Now, how did you feel going into the Crucible? We had this 52-hour long, field endeavor, hardly any sleep, hardly any food, constantly on the move. That was definitely one of the most challenging things that I've had, especially like when I went in at 18, it's just, that was a huge shock and awe for me. What was that like for you kind of going into that event?
Really, I think by the time I got to the Crucible, I was in full Marine mode. I was digging it. I was loving it. I was ready to just get out of boot camp and into my unit. So, I mean, I really liked the Crucible. It's sort of a joy and suffering type situation. I remember when I was going through it, I don't remember exactly which month. I want to say like March timeframe, maybe February timeframe. I just remember it was really cold. That was one of the hardest parts about it, was just sleeping in the freezing cold temperatures on the dirt with the sleeping system. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge. I was a squad leader at the time, so I had a role to play, and I tried to motivate the other Marines and everything. So it was a good time.
Yeah, good nostalgic moments. I mean, it probably wasn't the most fun in the moment, going through that suffering, but you can't help but look back on moments like that, which is a great deal of nostalgia, because it shapes you in many ways for the better. So it may not have seemed like it at the time, but looking back on it in hindsight, very much so, it certainly does. So kind of fast forwarding a little bit from, beyond boot camp, and when you actually went out into the fleet, like where did you end up being stationed? Did you remain on the West Coast? Did you go East Coast, Okinawa maybe? Where'd you head to after that?
I headed to, so I enlisted as a 35-31 motor transport operator. So I went right after basic training, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where I learned to become an operator. And then I went back to San Diego that's where I ended up being stationed. I got stationed with 1st Marines out of Camp Pendleton.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know you had a couple of deployments as well during your time when you were in the service. So can you talk to us like a little bit about that? Where did you end up going? Maybe how many tours you did while you were in?
Yes. So I ended up deploying twice with 1st Marines, which becomes Regimental Combat Team 1 once you deploy. But so it was RCT 1. And we did 2 deployments, but they were actually back to back because we were an infantry regiment. So we had to oversee the exchange of the battalions. So we would do, like, you had a choice. We knew that we were going to have to do back to back deployments. You could choose 6 months and then go home for 2 weeks of R&R and then come back for 7, or you could do a 7-month, go for 2 weeks of R&R and come back for 6 more. So I chose to go 7 and 6. And that was in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. We were stationed in Fob Dwyer, right outside of the city of Marja. And I was there from 2010 to 2011, 13 months total.
Wow. Okay. So now being out in deployment, and, I'm going to kind of sort of just be pretty overview with your deployment, because we can definitely really dive deep down talking about that. That'll probably take an entire podcast episode in and of itself. But, no doubt though, challenging experience, probably a very memorable experience. I'm sure you probably had your highs and lows, just like anywhere else you could probably go. Right. But what I'm kind of curious is what was it like adjusting coming back from deployment? Because, you're out there, you're slugging it out, with, First Marines, and then you come back and you're trying to get back into quote unquote normal life, right? So what was that adjustment like for you? Just kind of being out there, being at such a high op tempo, and then coming back and just trying to, I guess for lack of better terms, down regulate upon return.
It was a lot, man. It was a big adjustment. We First Marines. So the master sergeant of my platoon ended up creating these massively ambitious campaigns, right? We decided that the First Marine Regiment was going to take in all of the disabled vehicles from all the battalions and all the combat outposts in the Helmand province. And then, in our AO, basically. I don't know if it was the entire Helmand province, but in our whole AO. And we also, that was for the mechanic side, because we were attached as mechanics and operators. And then for the operator side, he wanted to supply generators to all the combat outposts in the AO. So we were on mission constantly. And I forgot to mention that right before I deployed, I got sent to a specialty school to get a secondary MOS as a 3536 vehicle recovery operator. So I was basically just during the whole deployment, I was mostly a combat recovery operator, operating an MK36, which is like it's like a huge off-road tow truck. People can look it up if they're curious what it looks like, but it was a lot, man. We were on mission constantly, weeks at a time in the farthest combat outposts, trying to get generators to them, trying to get supplies to them. And it was long hours, sometimes several days without sleep, sometimes very long drives to the desert. So I think the biggest, and then my job, of course, was to recover any disabled vehicles or sensitive information. So if a vehicle was blown up by an IED or disabled in combat, it was my job to go out with a gun team, like a team of gun trucks, and do a recovery on that vehicle. So it was a lot. It was constant missions. We'd sometimes come back and do a little R&R and get the vehicles right, get some PMC, preventative maintenance done on them, and then we'd head right back out as soon as we were resupplied. So I think the biggest adjustment for me was just the mental games of improvised explosive devices, because it was my job to kind of be in close proximity to them, to be recovering vehicles from giant blast craters. And, obviously you see them on the side of the road and stuff. Like small arms fire, it didn't give me any troubles. I didn't really have any traumas from small arms fire, but man, those IEDs messed with my head. It was probably a good 2 years recovery after I got home, just to try to get my sleep regulated properly after all those months of not sleeping right and very high stress and high tension. So yeah, it was just, we might have one more train coming by.
It's quite right.
Busy train.
That's real life, man. We'll just deal with that. We'll improvise and adapt and overcome like we always do, right?
Right. I'll let it blow its horn one more time here.
There we go. You gotta love, the sound of these industrial marvels, though. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that was pretty much it. I just it took me a while to get over. I would see trash bags on the side of the road and kind of, feel the feelings again. And it took me a couple of years, mostly just to regulate my sleep and to get the nightmares to go away. But other than that, I was definitely highly functioning and didn't have any problems in my normal life. It's just my demons kind of came for me in my sleep.
Sure. Yeah. Gotcha. Now, I want to kind of pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about archery, because for anyone who's not watching the video version of our conversation, I suggest go checking it out on our YouTube channel. But you're in your shop right now, where you make traditional longbows. Would bow making, was that maybe something that you kind of turned to kind of sort of I guess maybe just channel your focus a little bit on something, productive? You're producing tangible results. Kind of talk to us a little bit about when and how archery kind of became a part of your life. Where does that sort of fall in the timeline?
It sort of falls right in the timeline of where all of my, I guess, like struggles with the deployments went away. I guess it was probably a year and a half or 2 years after I had got back from the military, And I've always shot bows and arrows, but I just decided, I mean, in my younger years, but I just decided one day that I felt like shooting a bow again. So I went out to the store and bought just a mass produced fiberglass recurve and started shooting in my basement. And I mean, I just became infatuated with it. It was very therapeutic. I feel like archery kind of puts you in this very deep state of meditation, kind of introspection. You're breathing and you're getting that oxygen. You're getting kind of like an oxygen high as you're working your breath and everything, and you're intensely focused on the target. And it's sort of like a deep state of meditation. And I think, and it's extremely fun. So
right.
It's got its benefits, but I think that definitely falls right in the timeline of where, I don't know, I just got a new all-consuming purpose in my life. And that's definitely big for anybody that's, struggling with stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Good way to, stay focused for sure. So I guess, and this is going to sound like a condescending question the way I'm about to word this, but it's like, why traditional bows? Because, just being in the Marine Corps and, you said that you've finished up your deployments, in like the early 2000, I think you said 2010, I think somewhere around there. So you're very much a student of modern warfare. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious, like, coming back, going to a more primitive tool versus, let's say, a modern compound bow or something like that. What was kind of led you to pursue this more traditional form of archery versus like more modern form?
Well, there was kind of a short evolution there because I had shot this fiberglass recurve for I don't know, 6 months or so. And I felt like I was pretty accurate with it. And then I went out one day with one of my good friends, squirrel hunting with our bows. And I was shooting my trad bow and he was shooting a compound. And I was missing like I would only hit like every third squirrel that I would take a shot at. And he was just knocking them out of the trees one after the other. And it was wildly frustrating for me. So on an impulse, just because I didn't want to be showed up, but I went out and bought a compound bow. I think I bought like a Bear Crux or something like that. And, one of the mid-range bear compounds, and I hunted with it for one spring. I trained with it over the winter, and then opening day of turkey season, by 8 o'clock in the morning, I had my turkey and my season was over. So I just, it was a long shot too. It was like 35 yards. So I just didn't feel a deep connection to that type of archery. It felt kind of mechanical, with the metal bow and the wheels and the cables and the insane accuracy and the sighting systems. For whatever reason, it just didn't call to me. And I felt some negative emotions for, ruining my turkey season, which is just a thing that I had thought in my head. It wasn't really ruined. It was a successful season. And then from that point forward, I never shot it again. I put it up for sale on Craigslist. I had a bunch of gear that went with it. I sold all my compound archery gear and started building bows.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, we were kind of talking about this a little bit before we hit record here. I mean, the traditional style of archery, that's what's prevailed the longest, throughout history. And, we were kind of talking about the Mongols earlier, how, the Mongols, they were shooting bows that had like maybe 160-pound draw to them, shooting off of horseback, running at full speed, and shooting at moving targets. So I'd say like archery in the traditional sense has been more or less tied to badassery, I guess I'll say, throughout history. Yeah. So would you say that maybe that also has something to do, just kind of like the fact that it maybe just sort of ties into like our primitive ancestors and our ancient ancestors, so to speak, might have that have something to do with sticking with the traditional sense of things? Absolutely.
I think traditional archery also is very romanticized throughout history. You've got Robin Hood and these crazy good shots from back in the day, like Howard Hill, and you've got the stories of just I don't know, man. You got the stories of the ancient English, or not the ancient English, but the medieval longbow, like dominating the war field, and then the Mongols pretty much decimating their enemies with a trad bow. And then you start to look into these old archery books like Arab archery or Saracen archery, where they talk about archers who should train to easily be able to kill a man from 65 meters away, but no further, but I mean, and there's all this other stuff like being able to shoot. I don't remember what it says, 5 or 7 arrows. Like you shoot one arrow up into the air, and then these archers could shoot 5 or 7 more arrows before that arrow hits the ground. And that's how you know that you're fast enough with your war bow. So it's everything about it. It's romanticized in movies. You've got Legolas, you've got Hawkeye, you've got the arrow. I think it's just the arrow.
Oliver Queen. Yeah. Who you remind me of, by the way.
I get that from time to time. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know if it's like in our DNA, if it's primal, or if it's just romanticized and always has been romanticized throughout history, and really great archers were the heroes of their time, and it's just got this lure, this pull, it's undeniable.
Yeah, well, and then of course, I mean, that's how humans have sustained themselves, just through like the sense of like hunting and procuring food and things like that. It was using tools like a traditional bow. So do you go out and actually hunt with your traditional bows now? I mean, have you kind of taken that up a little bit more now?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I do. Whatever seasons I can get a hold of it, or whenever I can find the free time. I'll be making a lot more time this hunting season, but the last few years, I just got to get it when I can, because it seems like there's always a huge surge of bow orders right before, the deer seasons or the springtime seasons. So I have to kind of make my bread when the getting's good. So a lot of times I'll miss a lot of the seasons, but I definitely hunt. I did a big elk hunt with a friend out in Idaho this year. I love to hunt small game and grouse and turkeys and whitetail deer. So it's a mixture of both. I definitely try to keep my social media pages more focused on the artwork and, the capabilities of the bow and the accuracy that you can attain. And I sort of maybe sprinkle in just a little bit of hunting, but I don't want the page to be hunting focused, because that's kind of a controversial idea. And I sort of want it to be accessible to everybody, both hunters and target archers. And I don't want to turn off an entire demographic if I'm posting, kill shots of animals and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. And I have noticed, kind of getting into archery myself, that I wouldn't say that there's like a clash or like a rivalry per se. I mean, maybe there is, but it's almost kind of similar to where like different branches of the military kind of like take jabs at each other. I kind of noticed it's sort of the same thing between like traditional archers and like compound archers, where like maybe a lot of traditional archers will say, oh yeah, those compound archers, they don't really know how to shoot. This is how a real archer shoots, or something like that too. So
all the nonsense about training wheels and whatever else people want to say. I think you're going to have that in any sport or any endeavor where there's any differences whatsoever. But to me, anybody that's slinging arrows is an archer. You know what I mean? There's no, I just want to see people out in the woods. I just want to see people shooting bows and getting connected to nature and understanding where their food comes and having a deeper connection with like taking animals' lives and providing for their family and stuff. So compound bow, fiberglass laminate bow, or all wood stick bow, it's whatever, man. Just get out there, get in the woods, enrich yourself that way. It doesn't matter what you're shooting. Crossbows. I don't know about crossbows. I'm gonna throw that out there.
yeah. There's a whole nother rabbit hole we can dive down there, man, for sure. So I kind of want to ask you a little bit next about the actual process that it takes to make bows. Like I said, you source the wood yourself, and you prepare everything, and it's a big labor of love, I guess I'll say. So kind of like break this down for us. Like, can you kind of sort of like give us a quick overview of like what the process entails to actually, make one of your bows?
Sure. Yeah. So I follow every tree from standing tree to finished bow. I probably cut 95 or a little bit more percentage of my own wood, and the rest I'll just get on stave trades with other bowyers. If there's a wood that I want to try that's maybe already seasoned from someone in a different region, we'll do a swap. I'll give them a wood that they can't get a hold of. They'll give me one that I get a hold of. But mostly I cut my own trees on local farms. And I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you're out there cutting down trees. Like, are you planting more trees? I'm like, no, because it just so happens that the best bow woods in our area are actually the invasive species or the trash trees that are encroaching on the natural habitat of our natural oak and walnut forests. So there's huge deforestation projects happening here all the time. Like some of our parks here in Omaha, some of the bigger hiking places, they're doing like park-wide clear-outs of invasive trees. So, I mean, people get worked up that I'm cutting down, 2 or 3 trees here or there, but they don't realize that there are massive projects underway where people are removing these trees already. So if I can get in there beforehand and get a couple of trash trees that just happen to make excellent bows, that's perfect for me. It's a win-win for both people. And then the other people that I get most of my wood from are farmers who are looking to expand their farm ground because trees don't make any money, right? Only tillable soil. So these guys will go in there with bulldozers and just push down the entire forest and just push it into huge piles and light it on fire in a couple of years. So I feel like I'm sort of like saving these burn piles, these trees that are just going to end up in the burn pile anyway, and sort of creating my art or giving them a second chance at an honorable life. So yeah, I do cut down trees, but it's very intentional, and it's only trees that are usually about to get pushed in or cut down anyway. Anyway, a little bit of a rant there, but I get a lot of hatred for cutting down trees, so I just thought I'd clear that up. But yeah, okay, so then on site, you cut the tree, right? And I'm only taking about 6-foot section of the trunk, unless it's a big enough tree. If it's 12 feet straight, then I can get 2 sections out of the same tree. But it's pretty rare in this area. They're usually, maybe 10 feet of trunk before the branches start. So I fell the tree in the woods. I've always got my sledgehammer and my wedges with me. The tree, after it's felled, is split out on site into at least quarters. If it's a bigger tree, it'll have to be split into eighths or maybe even smaller, just for transport. So I'll split them out with a hammer and wedges, load them up in my vehicle, get them back to the shop. And then the first step, which I try to do always, it doesn't always happen, especially on a big cutting day, but I usually like to strip the bark off right away. So I'll strip the bark off and reduce the stave to about, so terminology here. Once a tree has been split into pie-shaped pieces, that's considered a bow stave. Okay. So a small, say like 4 to 6 inch wide pie-shaped piece of a tree trunk is considered a bow stave. So then I'll take my hand tools, strip the bark off, reduce the bow stave down to about 2.5 to 3 inches wide and 2.5 to 3 inches deep. And then it's ready for seasoning. So bow wood has to be completely dry. And there are a couple different methods that you can use. You can season it slow, which is the preferred method. You reduce it down to say 2.5 by 2.5 by 6 feet long. And then it needs to sit for 1 year in a controlled environment, out of the weather and out of the rain and out of the bugs. So 1 year minimum seasoning time. 2 years is better. A 2-year seasoned stave is about as good as it gets, but there are also ways that you can speed up the process. So like someone who doesn't do this for a living, who's not constantly cutting trees and has a big revolving door of staves in, if you just wanted to try your hand at it, you can cut your bow stave down and rough out a bow blank while the tree is still green. And then you can just kind of lash it to a 2x4 with some rope so it doesn't shift. And that bow blank, now that it's very small and thin and almost in bow form, will be ready to go in about 90 days.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's a seasoning process. And then after that, I'll take a seasoned stave and I'll draw out my bow's profile on there and then reduce it down with various tools. If it's a huge stave that needs lots of mass reduction, I'll take some of the bigger mass off with a bandsaw, but the rest of the way, it's all hand tools. And then the bow's reduced down. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so like, how do you go about like tracking like all the staves that you cut to the time that they're being that they're just sitting to be seasoned for a year or 2 years? Like, how do you actually go about like tracking that? Do you just like log them somehow? Do you have like, I don't know, like an Excel spreadsheet where you log them? How does that work?
Nope. I just use a Sharpie marker, and on the end of every stave, I just write the month and the year that it was cut.
Okay.
Very, very simple. Then whenever you grab a stave, if you're curious about it, which when you're doing this all the time, I kind of like, I already sort of know just by looking at the staves which ones have been there for a year and which ones haven't. It's kind of weird. They're kind of like your little children, you know what I mean? You've gone through all this work to get them prepped, so you remember every one almost. But the easiest way is just a Sharpie with the month and the year on the end. And if
Gotcha.
you're ever curious, you can just take a peek and be like, oh, this one needs 4 more months.
All right.
But then a bow blank is roughed out with hand tools. A bow blank is a bow-shaped stick that has no function whatsoever. It just looks like a bow. It doesn't bend. And then you will begin the tillering process, which is systematic removal of wood to create an even arc. That's about the simplest way I can explain it. You're using a variety of different tools, a variety of different rasps and scrapers and also a tillering tree, which is a device that just allows you to step back and look at the bend. It's very simple. It's just a mechanical device with a lever with a pulley and a string. It allows you to step back and examine the bend of the bow. So then you're just slowly bending it. It'll usually be very heavy at the beginning, so there's a lot of wood removal. And you're just systematically removing wood from the strong spots and avoiding removing wood from the weak spots until you have a smooth, even arc.
Gotcha.
And that process is called tillering. And then after that, you shoot it in. And if it shoots great, you're done. And if it shoots terribly or it shocks so bad it knocks your teeth out of your head, then you've got some adjusting to do. But once you got it shooting smooth, you make a string for it, finish it out, sand it up, seal it up, put a handle on it, and you're good.
Gotcha.
It's
Okay.
ready to hunt.
All right. So tree, stave, blank, bow. Pretty much in that order. Did I get that right?
Pretty much. Yep.
Okay. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about, from what it kind of sounds like to me, making these like traditional self-made bows out of wood, like you just described, it's almost seems similar to what I would kind of say in archaeology, that it's like it's an unrepeatable experiment. Because let's say if you shave off too much on a bow to the point where it flexes to the point where maybe say it breaks or something, you can't just put it back together again and try over. I mean, I imagine at that point the blank's done and you got to just try your hands start fresh with a different one. So has there been moments where I guess I imagine there has to be some frustrating moments at times where it's just you either overshoot on something or make a mistake that you can't correct with that anymore after taking it through that process. Has that happened often in the past?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're just starting in the bow building journey, there's going to be so many headaches. I mean, you'll read every book and website and forum you can find. And then when it actually comes to putting hands on the bow, it's very easy to mess up. It has a steep learning curve. You'll be able to get, people will be able to get a shootable bow out of a strong wood like hickory or Osage. But I definitely broke bows in the beginning. A lot of your first bows will be sluggish shooters. You won't really understand design and performance that well. So you'll just sort of make what you think looks like a good bow, but maybe it's got too much mass, so it just kicks like a mule. Or you'll definitely develop hinges, which is an irreparable weak spot in the limb that is so weak that no amount of wood removal will be able to recorrect it. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of headaches. You'll break bows in the beginning, but eventually you'll I always try to tell people, if you're going to build bows, don't ever get attached to a stick until you have shot like 300 arrows out of that thing, because you just don't go through the emotional turmoil of yourself and falling in love with a bow that you can't even trust yet, because they will break in the beginning. So, and then once you figure it out, I mean, one day you're just going to make one that, man, it just really rips an arrow and it shoots smooth, and that's when you'll be hooked.
So like around 200 to 300 shots, is that kind of like your typical like quality control testing like phase before you ship one of them out?
Yeah, I try to do a minimum of 300 shots before I ship a bow out. I do that with every single bow. I'll do right after final tillering, which is when I feel like the bend is the most refined. That's when it'll get its first 100 or 200 shots. And then I'll sand out the entire bow, kind of let it chill for a day, string it back up the following day. And as long as the tiller hasn't shifted or nothing's, looking off, I'll shoot it a couple hundred more times, at least 100 more. And then I will begin the finishing process, which is one coat of oil every day for 6 days, followed by a coat of beeswax at the very end. But you've got some time there where the bow's just very idle. And that's where I make my arrows, make my bowstrings, make the handle wraps, get everything prepped. And during that time also, I will take the bow out, usually, a couple times in between coats of oil, and shoot it. And I'm always examining it very thoroughly, trying to make sure there's no compression fractures or splinters or anything. And yeah, they go through a pretty rigorous quality control.
Yeah, I imagine that's got to be the funnest part of the process, though, just actually test firing it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I get to shoot bows all day for a living. I mean, that's not really how it works, but there's a considerable amount of time that's spent shooting in bows, and that's a lot of fun.
Okay, right on, man. Very cool. And so I kind of want to shift gears a little bit here. You had a chance to kind of take your bow skills, your archery skills on season 7 of Alone not too long ago. So how did you end up getting cast for that show? I've always been kind of curious how it actually works for, people who get cast on, shows and, other survival shows like that.
I think it's kind of, so people need to know that the Alone show is shrouded in secrecy. It's very secret throughout the whole process. The production crew does not let the cast in on very many of the intimate details at all. So I just kind of know that you can apply for it. They have, I think 40 or 50,000 applicants per year, something like that. And then the other way is to be contacted by a headhunter or someone who is a casting agent who thinks that you would be a good fit for the show. So I got contacted by a casting agent, and she thought that I'd be a good fit for the show. So then I go through the application process, and then there's many, many interviews after that. And you fly all over the place, and you've got to go through selection camp where you have to meet with a larger group of people and prove yourself to be worthy of the top 10. And then, if you make it all the way through the gauntlet, you get on the show.
So it's like boot camp all over again to be on the show, basically, kind of, sort of,
Yeah.
Or I guess I'd say probably more like SF selection or something like that rather than boot camp. So
it's not really that extreme, but you'll do some stuff. You better know how to start fires and build shelters and purify water and skin animals, because you'll be doing all that in front of a panel of world-leading survival experts.
Oh,
so
really?
You cannot bullshit your way onto Alone. They'll smell you from a mile away.
Well, and I think for good reason too, because I mean, you're expected to be out there by yourself for 100 days. I mean, they don't want to just more or less send you to your doom. I mean, if they don't think you at least have the wherewithal to actually make it that long. So kind of just, before, after going through that whole process and getting selected, how did you prepare yourself, in the terms of, physically prepare, mentally prepare, logistically, getting your gear ready and everything like that? What actually went into preparing to be on the show?
So I think I over prepared a little bit. I got casted in the middle of winter time. I think I found out there was like 2 feet of snow on the ground when I found out that I had been selected for the show. So I was doing a lot of extreme cold weather survival, camping in the snow, like sleeping in the snow with minimal gear, and just trying to get myself acclimated to the cold. I think cold resistance therapy or like cold resistance training, whatever you want to call it, was a huge part of my training for the show. I would do it's just known as the Wim Hof technique, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do this breathing technique, and it gets you hyper oxygenated, and then you're supposed to be invincible to the cold. So every night for the entire winter, I would do the Wim Hof technique and go bury myself in the snow for 10 minutes in my underwear just to get used to extreme cold, because I knew that I didn't know the exact location. You don't know the exact location until basically right before you launch. But I knew for certain that Alone will always be frigid cold. They'll always pick a cold environment because the cold destroys people. So cold training was a huge one. Obviously, I shot with my bow. A ridiculous amount of time was spent with the longbow, which I already shot a lot, but I really ramped that up. I wanted to be a complete sniper with my longbow, and Trapping was a big one for me. I do not have a big trapping background. I come from a long line of outdoorsmen, but one thing that they were really never that into was running trap lines and stuff. We did a little bit of it, but it was never like a family thing. So I had to freshen up on trapping, freshen up on friction fires, which, just in case. You have modern fire starting equipment on the show if you choose to bring it. So that was most of it. A little bit of like me and my dad went out into the woods and we experimented with some different types of stone chimneys and stone stoves, like trying to create vortex stoves that can heat, that can heat a space very efficiently on a very small amount of fuel. We ended up figuring that out. I was super pumped about that. We had created this small compact vortex stove out of stones and mud that was just a rager with heat output. So super pumped about that. And that was pretty much it, I think.
Gotcha.
Which we'll get into how my training went, I guess, after the drop. But you can definitely over prepare for the alone show.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I figured that would be the type of experience where you almost could never prepare enough. I don't know. It's, but okay.
I thought so too.
All right.
That didn't turn out to be the case.
Very cool. All right. So kind of getting into actually being out there, for the show itself. And, and I'm going to try to do this without revealing any spoilers, because I want to encourage everyone to actually go and watch the season. But, just being out there and going through this experience, what were some of the challenges that you faced along the way? And, and I'm sure there's got to also be some highlights, from just being out there too, especially having gone through this. You prepared for it. You were, ready to go out there. So, so just fill us in, man. Highlights, challenges. What was it like?
Okay. Challenges, like I touched on a second ago, was over preparedness, I think, which is going to sound weird, but basically I really had a solid plan. You know what I mean? I had a shelter figured out that I was going to construct. I had a hunting plan in mind. I had a trapping plan in mind. And when you drop, it all goes out the window. My drop zone was nothing like I could have ever imagined. It looked nothing like the base camp. Like our base camp had soft soil. It had big trees. It had a lot of, different resources. There was small game running around everywhere. And I basically got dropped on the side of a mountain and with a granite rock slide going into the water. So I think we might have one more train. I don't know what's going on, man. These trains, that's
they're just rolling heavy today.
It's a heavy night for trains. Anyway, so they call it drop shock, right? It's a term that I think Barry coined on season 6, because you drop and everything that you train for goes right out the window.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's our train. So it's almost kind of sounds like what Mike Tyson once said. Everyone has a plan going into the ring until they get punched in the face, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I got there. My drop zone looked nothing like I had imagined it would. It had a shallow kind of cove in it, like a little bit of sort of just a piece that ran around an island that I had easy access to. But the only other spot that I had access to deep water for my gill net or hand fishing was incredibly treacherous. It was very steep and slippery, and it was just rock faces leading down into deep water. So that was a constant challenge. Just the water there and the situation on the shoreline is definitely dangerous. You saw, I guess I won't give too many spoilers, but you'll see definitely some of the other contestants really struggling with the dangerous shoreline. It's just the slipperiest stones you have ever imagined. They're covered in this lichen, and when it gets damp, it'll take your feet right out from under you, like cartoon style, just right on your back.
Jeez.
So the shoreline was a challenge. There was very, very little small game sign in my area. The small game trails were old looking. There were no high traffic areas. So I was really counting on the first snowfall so that I could see where the game was actually going. I had at one point, we'll get to the point where I didn't last very long out there, but I had probably 40 traps out, 20 squirrel snares and 20 rabbit snares. And I had seen no rabbit activity whatsoever. Another big challenge was I was really banking on the archery. I thought I was getting really pumped about it at base camp too, because there were just huge hares running around everywhere. There were squirrels everywhere. There were ptarmigan running through the bush. And I get out to my drop zone, and I hunted every day, pretty much every afternoon, everywhere I went, whether I was gathering materials or headed down to the shore or walking into the bush to explore my drop zone. I always had my longbow with me, and I didn't see anything. I saw no rabbit. I had a great location for like a rock ptarmigan, and saw none of those. It was mostly just squirrels, and they're so small out there. They're maybe 100 to 150 calories each. So you don't mess with the squirrels unless you happen to get one in the snare, or if you just, dink one with your bow as you're walking by, which I ended up doing on the show. I was just walking around like setting up traps, and I just dinked a squirrel real quick. But they're not even worth chasing. They're so small. So yeah, it was a huge challenge. I really wanted to rely on the bow hunting. I thought I was just going to be sniping animals all day long out there with my bow. Turns out there was no game. So I had to reevaluate. I had figured that I would have to sustain myself while I waited for the elusive big game opportunity. And while I waited for my cove to freeze over so that I could get over to this island that had access to a huge shoreline of deeper water. So I was excited about that. But I reevaluated. I was having no luck at all with my hand fishing line. I found out later from the locals that you don't hunt lake trout from the shore with a hand line. You got to get out to deeper water. So no luck with a hand line. Decided I would shift gears and make a gill net out there. And then as soon as I dropped the gill net in the water, I started getting fish every day. So the show, shows me getting the one fish or whatever, but the gill net was producing for me every day once I set it out. And yeah, then I got injured on the show, obviously. I mean, I kind of lost track of the original question there. I'm on a huge rant right now.
Okay. Well, I was kind of, curious, about some of like the highlights of being out there too, because, obviously there's a very challenging experience, especially with the frustrations that you were talking about of, trying to catch small game, and, you might be able to get a squirrel here and there, but that only, 150 calories will only last you so long, especially with all the activity that you're doing. But I have a feeling that there's got to be something liberating too about being out there. I mean, yes, you're alone, you're by yourself. And I know sometimes isolation for too long can be, very, tough in and of itself, because I mean, that's why, solitary confinement is like the harshest punishment someone can get in prison, because, we're social creatures, so it's hard being by ourselves. And, but at the same time though, it's like, there's also a lot of, modern day stressors that aren't present. You're not constantly attached to the internet and social media and all that dopamine that is always trying to be flooded through, those platforms. And then also, you don't have to worry about putting gas in your car or your truck or, paying bills or anything like that. So would you say that, at least that's how I was experienced when I was like living in West Africa for my Peace Corps service, like we talked about earlier. Would you say that that's also something that you've experienced? It's just kind of nice to sort of unplug, I guess, so to speak, being out there and being that remote?
Absolutely. I think that for me was the biggest takeaway, was even though I only spent, 12 days out there before the injury got a little too bad to carry on, I think it was incredibly transformative in that I just sort of realized how unbelievably distracted we are in our everyday lives. I mean, you can fill every waking moment with distraction. You've got it, you've got your cell phone in your pocket, you've got the radio on, you've got podcasts and music in the background, you've got TV in the evenings, whatever kind of modern conveniences you subscribe to, they're everywhere. You've got food in the refrigerator. It's just the silence out there, and just the time alone and the time without distraction makes you realize kind of how much of our lives we're wasting, I think, on just mindless pacification with especially electronic devices. I mean, the days feel so long. It's incredible. One day out there feels like 3 days. It's unbelievable how slow the time goes. And I think it's just because you're actually living in real time. You're not living in this distracted, multitasking chaos that we live in all day long. another really important takeaway for me was just realizing that I don't think humans were meant to be as stimulated as we are by our environment.
Sure,
Like I just got this feeling that driving around in cars and traffic is madness. Like when you first get back from this experience after no technology or conveniences whatsoever, and you get in a car for the first time, it's actually kind of terrifying because your brain is so overstimulated. And also I think that human beings, I think that we tune out like 90% of our environment just so that we can survive, just so that our brains don't get overloaded and melt down. Because when you first get out of the woods, after eating nothing but, fish and berries and living out there in the silence and just the clean air. In my case, they flew me straight to the hospital because I had a knee injury and I needed to get ultrasound and x-rays and all that stuff. So when you first land in the city and I started walking around, it's crazy. The smells, I mean, I could smell every person that I walked by. I could smell like 10 different kinds of food. I could hear the electricity in the walls in my hotel room. Like it just makes me think that our senses are so dumbed down on a regular basis just so that we can perceive our environment and our everyday chaotic lives without melting down, that it really gives you a new appreciation for how intense the human senses can be as well.
Yeah.
Just like your sense of smell and taste and hearing, it gets exponentially better. Unlike anything I've ever felt before. Like I said, I couldn't sleep for days because I was kept awake at night by the sound of the wires in the walls humming.
Yeah, actually, that was what I was kind of curious to ask you about is like sleep. I mean, I'm sure you probably had like a couple of like sleepless nights with, I don't know, like if you hear like wolves in the background or something like that, maybe, or just some other like stirring out in nature. But, it's just one thing I was kind of like looking into. I've been kind of diving into like sleep science and like how sleep for our ancestors have been. And I think in the past, before we had electricity and the light bulb and everything like that, as soon as the sun goes down, there wasn't really much for people to do at that point because their source of light was, no longer there. So they would either and there's almost like how long you could just, sit around the campfire, talking with everyone before you just want to go and turn in. But it's like now with the light bulb, we're staying up like much later than we naturally should be, and I noticed this when I was living in West Africa, because in the village that I lived in over there for Peace Corps, I didn't have electricity, and pretty much if I needed to do anything at night, I wore a headlamp. But, I just really pretty much found myself going to bed at that point because, what else was I really supposed to do? I mean,
yeah.
So what was kind of like sleep like for you, just like being out there and, just kind of more or less naturally just going with the sun?
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't as extreme for me as it would have been for some of the contestants who lasted a really long time. Where like, some of these people that are out there for 70, 80 plus days, they're staying in their shelter 18 plus hours a day until darkness up north. So it wasn't as extreme for me. It felt like pretty normal days. I mean, the sun went down. It would be like just a normal Midwestern winter where the sun goes down at 5:30 or 6 o'clock and, it's up in normal time. But I honestly, the sleep for me, man, I'm gonna get myself killed in the woods. I sleep. I don't know if it's the Marine Corps or what, but I sleep like a log. It doesn't matter where I'm at, dangerous environment, surrounded by predators. I sleep like a log. So I actually woke up on the second day that I was there. I hadn't started building my shelter yet because I wanted to explore the entire area before I chose a shelter spot. And so I spent 2 days just walking my entire drop zone. And on the second day, on both the first and the second day, I just laid on the ground in my sleeping system and kind of wrapped myself up in a tarp like a burrito so that I could stay out of the rain. And I woke up on the second day with fresh bear scat just all around me. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't even hear these bears. So, or the bear, whichever wanted more, whether it was one or two. But yeah, it was, I don't know, man, I sleep like a log. I had no trouble with sleep at all. It was some of the most restorative sleep I've probably ever had. There is a weird thing that happens though. Like I said, when your sense of hearing gets really amplified and the quiet up there in the north, is unlike anything you've ever heard. The night times are so silent. There's not a sound. On a night where there's no wind, it's like a sound deprivation chamber. So there were a couple nights where there was no wind at all, no movement in the forest, where I was kept awake at night by the sound of my heartbeat or like the sound of my blood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could hear like a whooshing sound of your blood moving through your veins. It was really intense.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, I slept like a baby. My shelter was warm.
Right on. So obviously going through that experience, and you obviously saw the benefits of what it's like to unplug from the modern world, and of course you're back in the modern world now. And how do you kind of sort of strike a balance now in your life? Because of course you're active on social media, and a lot of that is of course to for business purposes and things like that, for promoting your brand. So how do you kind of strike a balance to where it's like you're able to use those tools to promote your business, but still kind of be able to detach from those, get out in nature and have time for yourself? How do you kind of sort of strike a balance now that you're back?
So I don't know what other terms to use for it. I mean, it's just gonna be like a catchphrasey term, or like a cliche term. But I kind of subscribe to like a minimalist lifestyle in both possession of physical goods, and I also kind of believe in digital minimalism. So I don't have 15 different channels open. The only social media platform I use at all is Instagram, and then I have my website, which I need to operate my business, but other than that, I just I try to keep my responsibilities, my debts, everything as freed up as possible. I try to keep my distractions. Like I like to have a very minimal number of apps on my phone, just the basics, just the ones that I need, as few as distractions as possible. And I live a debt-free lifestyle. I can thank minimalism for that. So I really don't have like a big overhead. I don't have a lot of worries. I don't have a lot of bills. And I think that to me is the ultimate freedom. That's where I strike the balance. You know what I mean? If I want to take 3 days off in the middle of the week, just because I can, if I have the time and I don't have a huge workload. So yeah, it's just, I think just minimizing, freeing up your time. You got to free up time to get out in the woods. You got to free up time to meditate. You got to free up time to have introspection or nature walks. Like, I really like what we just call tree therapy. You know what I mean? Just long walks through the trees with no sound, no music, just your own thoughts, kind of think about life. So you got to free up the time. Yeah. That's where I find the balance.
Yeah. And then of course it also just becomes like recognizing the fact that, a lot of these social media platforms out there, they are designed to keep you engaged for as long as possible. The algorithms are going to try to show you what they think you want to see. So you just keep scrolling and, and they're mining your attention basically. And it kind of took for me to sort of recognize exactly what it is that they were doing, good or bad. I mean, however, they want to do it. I mean, I get it. They're a business too, but it's just kind of recognizing that you can really spend a lot of time on there and it doesn't really move the needle for you in any real way. A lot of times, more often than not, it doesn't. So, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate that answer because it's something that I've been working on, and I agree with you. It's just we're a pretty distracted society right now, putting it simply. I mean, we are, let's face it. So, yeah. But yeah.
I think it's important for people to realize just how much they're actually being manipulated by the technology. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's the documentaries out now, like Social Dilemma. There's, interviews with Tristan Harris, who really sheds light on exactly how bad it is. But just recognizing how much you're actually being manipulated, I think is really important. It'll open your eyes, to the fact that you're not just scrolling through these apps. They're controlling you. They know exactly what you want to look at next to keep you engaged. Like you said, the attention economy, that's how these huge companies make their money. So for me, the only way to avoid that is just the digital minimalism thing. Very minimal social media, just what I need to run my business. It would probably benefit me to have a YouTube and a TikTok and a Facebook, but I choose not to. Instagram keeps me busy enough. So the only way to escape it is just to stop looking at it. and especially not look at a whole bunch of them at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And in nature, as we've been talking about, is a good way to do that. Like, I may take my cell phone with me, like, if I'm out on the trails, but I usually will just put it on like airplane mode and just use it as a camera, really. And, and then a lot of times I find myself, especially with, being an archaeologist, and I go to some of these like remote locations, I will probably just not take pictures at all. I mean, I'll see like just this beautiful valley. I'm on top of a pueblo in, like, let's say New Mexico. And I'm like, you know what? This is for me right now. I don't really care to share this with the world and, try to get, brownie points for posting this. This is for me. And, I'm going to be selfish with my time in nature,
Absolutely.
And it's like, and it doesn't have to, and for anyone getting out in nature, it doesn't have to be quite to the extremes like you did, just helicopter your way to some remote location and try to survive for 100 days, but, maybe go to a local park or, some green space nearby and just take a day hike and just try to do that more frequently too. Right. Very beneficial for sure.
And just walk around and just be quiet and just look at stuff, look at the birds, look at the animals, listen to the stream, listen to the wind blowing through the trees. Actually look at the trees. The trees themselves are mind blowing. I think just appreciating trees will transform your respect for nature. But yeah, just pay attention, open up your senses, listen, smell stuff, look at stuff, know your plants so you don't touch anything poisonous or eat anything crazy. You know what I mean? But you don't have to get extreme. Like you said, a day hike through your local park in silence and, just appreciating it. It's definitely transformative.
Yeah, definitely.
I think people would get more from it than they realize. You don't have to go on these long expeditions. You don't have to go on week-long trips or 2-week-long trips out in the mountains. You can get a lot from just a 2 or 3 hour walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the greatest minds in history were they attributed their thought processes and their successes to long walks in nature. Some of the great, the Stoics of the old ages, they all firmly believed in long walks in nature and in silence and in solitude. And it's definitely been a transformative tool for me.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't help but just put things like in perspective, because it's like, I do like 45 minutes of road work like every single morning, like whether that's a walk, a weighted ruck march, or a run. But it's just that 45 minutes, it just helps put things in perspective for me. And normally when it's like first thing in the morning, it helps me start the day on a good note and just kind of think about how I want to go about my day, what I need to tackle. And I notice I'm a lot more productive on days when I stick with that routine versus days that I don't. So something about that, yeah, you're right. Yeah. It just helps you, calm your mind and focus just a little bit better. So for sure.
Definitely.
All right, man. Well, since we're kind of sort of bumping up against time, I want to ask you a little bit more about like the business side of the house for organic archery. And I believe you might have some of your finished bows maybe nearby. Anything you want to do a little show and tell really quick?
Sure. Yeah, I'll grab a couple real quick.
All right, right on.
See if I can put these somewhere real quick. All right. Sorry, this is finished customer work, so I'm being delicate.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, we got a couple different ones here. So this is a bow made out of red elm.
Oh, wow.
That's the back. It's a 64-inch American flat bow with a pyramid profile.
Amazing.
So let's see if we can get the whole thing in there. I don't know how well people will be able to see this, but
it's coming in pretty clear. I can see fine.
And then this is a rawhide backed Osage bow. I very rarely do backed bows, but this one I got a couple staves in the shop here that have a little thinner rings than I really prefer. So just for a little bit of extra insurance, I'm backing a couple bows. So is the Rawhide backed Osage.
Oh,
It's got a buckskin handle wrap. And then, sorry, I got another bow in the vise right in front of me. So this is an unbacked Osage self bow. This is probably my most, I don't know, desired item by my customers, I suppose.
Gotcha.
Osage orange is considered to be the king of bow woods. It's just kind of earned that reputation. It's very strong in tension and compression, so it makes a really snappy bow. It recovers very quickly. It's got good arrow speed. So this is an unbacked Osage. There's the difference between backed and unbacked. Here.
No, it's amazing work, man.
And I try to keep my bows as efficient as I can for the customers. So they're usually between 64 inches to 68 inches long, 1.5 to 2 inches wide. And then, they taper to just 3/8 inch nocks or so. And I use a D90. I do use Dynaflight 97 for the strings. I don't know, just archery stuff. Here's an unfinished one. This one has a little bit of snake in the grain. You can see how it's sort of.
Yeah.
So this bow is almost ready for oil, but this is in totally unfinished form. I've just got it sanded down right now. I need to do some more test shooting with it. I need to make a string for it. So this one's just chilling in the vise, getting its final steps.
Right on. Oh, that's amazing work, man. It's one of those things where, I always just appreciate, someone who's a master at their craft and seeing them like put in like the work. That's one of my favorite parts. About your Instagram account is you're breaking down the process. You'll show the different steps, and it's just kind of cool just to see how it comes from the raw materials to the finished form like that. It's a complete transformation. It's just so cool to see.
Yeah. I try to share as much of the process as I can with my audience. I'm totally transparent about it. I don't have any secrets in bow building. You know what I mean? The information is out there for people. You gotta be willing to read about it. You might be reading for a while from a couple different sources before you find out everything that you need to know to build a successful bow. But the information's out there. Some of it you got to pay for in books or Patreon accounts or whatever. But I just try to be as transparent as I can on social media without like getting into the nuances of the craft. Right. You know what I mean? I don't want to bore people to death, but I'll definitely share with them like the process, the tillering process. I think one thing that I do that's a little bit different than the other bowyers is I allow my customers to watch the entire build from start to finish. So they get to see like the stave that I pick out. They get to see the stave being roughed out. They get to watch the entire tillering process on my Instagram story. And then they get to see the different steps of the finishing process. And then obviously I try to take like my money shots or whatever, my beautiful product photography at the end before I send them away.
Nice.
try to make them look as pretty as they are in person, but it's always a constant battle with lighting and all that camera jazz.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. All right. So, as far as making bows is concerned, you got your bow making workshops that you're going to be offering in 2021. We're looking at probably an early February release for this episode. So, so probably at this point, our listeners might have missed the January workshop, but you got them pretty much slated for the remainder of the year. So as far as attending a workshop or maybe just ordering a bow from you directly, how can our listeners go about doing that?
Okay, so I've actually had to, and this is just by choice, but I'm discontinuing custom orders. So for 2019 and 2020, I've been so swamped with custom bow orders. I mean, it's a wait list. I've not had, I think I've only had in 2 years like one surplus bow to sell. So it's very confined to the wait list. And I'm working myself to the bone just to try to keep wait times under 12 weeks.
Gotcha.
So I've decided for 2021, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to cancel custom orders, and I'm going to build bows one at a time at my own pace. And I'll post them up when they're ready on social media and my website, and they'll be sold on a first come, first served basis. And I'll try to keep them all fairly reasonable, fairly uniform. I'll probably try to stick to bows between the 45 to 60 pound range. Nothing crazy, just good hunting weight weapons, and that'll open them up to a larger audience. But yeah, so listeners can't order custom bows for 2021. But if you would like to build one, that's a new thing this year. And that's also the reason that I quit doing custom orders, is so that I could actually free up the time to get people in here to build their own bows. So big changes for this year, and it's just by demand. People have been asking me to do classes, and I just haven't had the time. So if you want to build your own bow, yeah, once a month I do a 3-day workshop where you can come into the shop, and we'll go out on a wilderness walk. I'll explain tree identification, tree selection. We'll talk about how to split out bow staves and how to season wood. And then you can come back to the shop where we'll start on a seasoned bow stave. And yeah, I'll step you through the process from start to finish, and you'll build your own bow. I won't interfere unless you absolutely want me to. But yeah, I'm trying to structure the class in a way that isn't just like a step-by-step walkthrough. I really like people to leave here with the ability to build their own bows for life. So I'm sure I'll have some tweaking in the first couple classes, but I'm really trying to make it retainable information. And yeah, the people that come to the classes, they'll leave 3 days later with a functional, high performing hunting weight weapon. We'll spend the last day out on the range behind the shop here, learning the fundamentals of longbow marksmanship. And I'll send you on your way with your new bow.
All right, right on. So courses this year, and now for like the custom bows, how you're going to do on first come first serve? Is that going to be like on a quarterly basis, or do you know how you want to time that out throughout the year?
There's going to be no timing. I'm still going to work on bows full time when I'm not hosting classes, so they'll just be put up, as often as they're ready. It could be. The process is very scattered. Sometimes I get 3 bows done in the same week. It just falls that way because certain species take longer, and sometimes maybe I'll only have 1 bow for the whole month. So it just depends. It'll just be it'll be random, and yeah, good luck. Just gotta get them when they come.
Keep your eyes peeled, basically.
Yeah.
So, all right, very very cool, man. And where can we? Where's the link that we could go to look up your class schedule for 2021?
So my website is organicarchery.com, all one word, and then inside my website there is a tab on the top called 2021 classes. So click that. It'll give you all the dates. It'll give you a detailed rundown of the class, what you can expect, what's allowed and what's not, as far as kids and alcohol and all that stuff. And then, I'll describe the amenities on there, where you can stay, what we provide here at the shop. And it's all right there in 2021 classes. And then once you decide that you want to book a class, you can, or if there have bows in stock that you would like to order, there are links on the page just to head over to my contact/order form, and you can just shoot me a message. If it's a bow you're trying to buy, just include the serial number in the message. If it is a class you're trying to book, there's tabs right there that you can fill out step by step to book a class.
Okay. All right. And I'll get those linked up in the show notes for this episode so the listeners can go and find them there. All right. So getting further on into our wrap up here, one thing that I always ask my guests to do before we close out is to issue a challenge to our listeners, because, we talked about a lot today. We unpacked a lot of things today. But of course, information through a podcast can only take our listeners so far. They actually have to follow it up with action once they're done listening to us speak, right? So I wanted to ask you, what challenge would you issue to our listeners for them to go out and start living a more adventurous life?
For a more adventurous life.
Yes, sir.
Start with the nature walks, I think. Don't become overwhelmed with all of the knowledge and skills that you quote, need to be a wilderness survival expert or some sort of, extreme version, just get yourself out there into the woods. Take nature in and let it heal you. Let it calm your mind, and you'll be better for it. I promise. Just if you can do one thing, just at least once a week, get out for a nature walk. 2 hours, 2 hour nature walk once a week.
Okay.
It'll change your life.
All right. Right on, man. Couldn't agree more. All right. So what I have next for you is my final three. These are three. I like to think that they're fun questions that I ask all my guests at the end of the show. So you're going to get asked these as well. And we're going to do this in rapid fire format. So here we go. And the first of those questions is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Oh man. The Ozark Mountains in Arkansas.
Okay, cool. I need to explore more of Arkansas. I'm trying to make it to all 50 states. Arkansas was state number 42, but I was only in there for like a day in like the southeastern part of it and didn't really see much. So yeah, I'll have to double back in there. All right, next question. What is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do?
Kill a moose with my longbow.
Any ideas where you want to go do that?
Canada.
Okay. All right, cool. Imagine they have quite a few up there. So. All right, awesome. And the last question, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
Oh man, everybody always asks this question in the rapid fire rounds that I've done, and it's going to sound cheesy, but my favorite animal is the hawk. I just love them. I got a deep connection to those birds. I see them everywhere. It's like they're calling to me.
Well, birds of prey are pretty awesome. My favorite animal is also a bird of prey. It's the peregrine falcon, and it's
nice.
Yeah. I actually saw one in the wild when I was in the Gambia, which is where I was in West Africa for Peace Corps. It was one of the most amazing nature experiences I've ever had. Like, it was right there. It was. Oh gosh, I get all excited just telling the story. So yeah. So I can resonate with you, man, for sure. So awesome.
I think mine is probably the red-tailed hawk, but man, they're just birds of prey are beautiful. They're amazing creatures. Definitely.
Right on, man. All right. So before we close out here, let's just recap really quick where our listeners can go to connect with you. So websites, social media. Again, let's give the rundown one more time.
Sure. Yep. www.organicarchery.com is where I will be selling bows, and that's where you can book a class. And then if you'd like to just see what I'm up to or watch me build bows throughout the day, you can check me out on Instagram at organic_archer.
Okay. And like I said, I'll get all that linked up in the show notes for this episode. Or if our listeners are actually watching it on YouTube, it'll be in the description below. They can just find the links there, make it nice and convenient. So, all right. Well, Correy, man, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me today. I know you're a busy man, and you got a hell of a process, as you described, that you got to go through to get your products out. But I really appreciate you taking the time for joining me today and sharing your story and all your insight with myself and the listeners, man. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it has. It's been a great talk. I really appreciate you having me on, Josh.
All right. Right on, brother. Semper Fi.
Semper Fi, brother. Take care.